Hello everyone, I'm back for a little while. Um, Recently on Twitter, somebody asked me a question about protagonists and we had a little talk, and so I decided to make this recording to sort of talk about a bit of that. Not sure how it's gonna go. My battery's at 34% and my family's upstairs, but I will be recording an audio commentary, like my fifth or sixth one, on Jurassic Park. So, get the movie up to watch along, or like if you just want to hear my voice, that's fine, but you've probably already exited, so I'll just press play. In 3, 2, 1. Oh my god, it's being slow. Okay, wait, 3, 2, 1. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I have the 3D thing going, and for a while I thought it was gonna. I can't talk today. I'm out of breath because I just walked upstairs, and I know it sounds really bad, and it is. Oh god, I'm so tired. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I said oh yeah before I remembered, because I didn't want to break the flow, but now it's even worse. So basically what happened is I did a little infographic, I don't even know if you could call it that, but I did a little table in Microsoft Word about why Claire is the protagonist of Jurassic World, and then somebody brought up the fact that Ellie Sattler could be the protagonist of— oh my god, my machine just broke, didn't it? Oh wait. No, it just jumped a little bit. No, the Universal logo just disappeared for like a split second, it was weird. Whew. That's weird that it's the new Universal logo. I don't know if they just put it there. Oh, probably because this is the one shown in theaters, and so they probably switched it out unless they're going to use both. They might? I don't know. No, never mind. Okay, so they brought up the fact that Ellie Sattler might be the protagonist of Jurassic Park, and that's not true. It's Ellen Grant. I know, coming from me, if you were on Jurassic Park Legacy, you probably know that I did this whole essay thing where I argued that Ellie Sattler was the protagonist of Jurassic Park, and the whole reason I did that was I was playing devil's advocate. It's not true. It was just for fun. So I'm going to explain why she's not the protagonist in this. If we're talking about the novel version of Jurassic Park, I don't think there is really a clear protagonist. Like, Grant comes close, but it's kind of written in a weird way where it's like, it's not very cinematic, which I know it's a novel, but it's not very cinematic. It's not very three-act structure-ish. Things seem to sometimes happen for no reason or not to advance the plot, which, you know, like, it's good in some cases. I don't actually like the original Jurassic Park novel all that much. I haven't read through The Lost World yet. I'm really behind on that. I should do that, but there's so many books I want to read right now. Oh, anyway, so in order to talk about the protagonist and what makes a protagonist, it's really important to talk about the structure of a plot, because a protagonist is not, like, just a character who is either good or in the movie a lot, or who, like, does things that are important. They have to be tied to the plot in a certain way, and it really, it's like, when I talk about this, there's exceptions to the rule. It's sort of more of a spectrum. But Jurassic Park is mostly a three-act structure, as are many movies, especially Hollywood movies. But, so what we're in right now is, I think, called The Point of Attack, and that's usually sort of, at the beginning-ish. It's usually shows either villains or antagonists or something, you know, just sort of like setting up the conflict or the, like, you know, just something. Like, something usually bad. So this prologue is an example of that, because the raptors are definitely, like, the villain dinosaurs in this, and, you know, they're tied to the, like, theme of, you know, genetic engineering and stuff, and so, because in the climax, there are two sort of things that you face. There's the emotional climax sort of thing, there's, like, I don't know what to call it, it's not really physical, but it's like the, just sort of superficial thing. So in Jurassic World, like the superficial thing is fighting the Indominus Rex and making sure it, like, dies, or is defeated, but, you know, it does die. And the emotional whatever is, you know, Claire learning to be a hero, etc. And so those two things sort of have to be tied together for, like, okay, I'm gonna sort of say for a good movie, but of course there are movies that don't have to do this. It's just, like, recommended and it's more satisfying. Like, Disney movies are a good example of this. Most of them anyway, they're emotionally satisfying because they have all these little elements put in place. So right now, we're in the first act, which is sort of setting up the characters, the conflict, everything. It's basically like the introduction, and the first, second, and third act can be, you know, long or short, or like, it's not that you divide a movie in three, and then each section is the act. Like, there's sort of turning points, and like sometimes it's ambiguous. There's a lot of, because that's how it is with art. Like, not everything fits a formula perfectly. Some things fit more than others, and sometimes there's like a bit of a gray area. Like, sometimes there's two kind of climaxes where there's a fake out, and then there's, and like some people would say, oh, no, 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 that's the rising action. It's just another one. It just happens close to the climax. But in the way it's presented, sometimes it is just two climaxes. I can't really think of an example right now. But I'm sure you probably have watched a movie where it seems like the danger has ended, but then an unrelated threat to something that has just been defeated comes to attack. I suppose maybe we could compare this to Hybrid Vendetta, the thing I wrote, because all of a sudden there's this big Carnosaur at the end. Oh my god, I said Carnosaur, I meant Carnotaur. I'm sorry, I've been watching Carnosaur too much. I don't think there's even a Carnotaur in that. But Oh, okay. Sorry, the movie went on without me thinking. Okay. So now they're introducing Grant, who is the protagonist, because they sort of build him up, and I'm looking, it's like, oh wow, actually, like, I think 5 minutes into the movie, so he's introduced, I think, a little earlier than Claire, because if I remember correctly, she's introduced like 6 minutes and either 43 or 13 seconds in. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but I did look at it once, because that's another thing about the protagonist, is usually they're introduced fairly early on because you're supposed to follow them throughout the movie. So, but it's not necessarily the case for all of them, and because the first character you see is not always the protagonist, because, first of all, there's a point of attack, and second of all, there's, it's just like there's other people in this world. And, I guess I was gonna say that you see, Grant before Sattler in this, and you kind of do. I guess you probably see his hand first, but then there's this revealing shot that we're watching right now, and he's just introduced just a few seconds before her. And so you could make the argument that they're sort of introduced at the same time, but that doesn't really have anything to do with who's the protagonist. The reason I might use this to defend Claire versus Owen is that Claire is introduced much, much, much earlier, and we follow her arc earlier than Owen's. So, yeah. Oh my god, all this technology. I was just thinking today, because I've been watching a lot of Simpsons, because it's up on YouTube and all the DVDs are at my dad's house. It's really weird to me when I watch Simpsons now and they use iPhones. Like, the characters, they just pull out this animated iPhone, and just, like, for some reason it always distracts me. So yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to use this as a defense point, but Grant is now sort of like leading the conversation. Actually, you know what? That can be a defense point. He's leading the conversation now, and he's the one sort of primarily engaged in it, whereas Ellie is just sort of sitting there and adding things to him. Again, that's another thing, is a good way to find out who is the protagonist and who is either the love interest or deuteragonist is who is leading most of the scenes and who is supporting. And something you'll see in a lot of bad movies or movies that have bad sequences is sometimes they'll forget they have a protagonist and the events of the world will take over. So, for example, I know I'm going to get on Beauty and the Beast 2017 in a while. I'm going to do a full review. It's coming. It makes me so depressed to write it, and it's really, really hard for me. But for the whole Be Our Guest scene, unlike the original version, they sort of forget that there's a protagonist because they're trying to dazzle the audience, and so instead of feeling the scene through Belle, you're just sort of like seeing things happen, and you're the audience, and the movie's playing to you, and that's why that scene fails. But another example might kind of be in Jurassic World, where it's during the raptor scene where they're going at night and attacking people, and Claire isn't in it a lot, but there are some sort of reaction shots from her that are like inserted into there that do indicate that, number one, she's still there, number two, she's engaged, number three, she is a protagonist, because if she was just sort of the love interest, we wouldn't need to see her reactions to all of this, and it wouldn't be crucial, you just sort of cut to her when the raptors come back. So, flip this around for a second. There's a lot of moments in Jurassic World where Owen is kind of in the scene, but mostly it's focused on Claire, and when we're focused on Claire, we don't see reactions from Owen all that much. So, sorry, there's noise upstairs. I don't know if you can hear that. But yeah, also, yeah, Alan has this whole monologue, which is, monologues are usually reserved for important characters, either the mentor, villain, or protagonist. Usually. That's just a trend, it's not like a law. And so this sets up his emotional arc, which is about reproduction, having children. And I said also on Twitter that Jurassic Park is about reproduction and creation and stuff. And somebody said, no, it's about like genetic engineering. I'm like, well, that's kind of the same thing, but it's mostly about reproduction and creation because of like the whole man becoming God thing. And, now we have the power of, the gods to wield daddy's shotgun. So it is about that, and because you're sort of changing the genetic structure of things, but by doing that you're creating something. So there's like creation, destruction, and there's no good word that's like symmetrical to that for changing, but basically it is just creation because, by changing something willingly, you're like inherently somewhat creating a new organism or whatever. So that's why, having children is kind of, and because, having babies the traditional way is, like, somewhat opposed to just, like, genetically creating things. It's kind of like Claire's arc, where she is getting back to the natural state of being, where nothing is really under control, and what happens, happens, and, family, etc. I love how he shakes his finger, that's adorable. And the dust, that's cute. Oh... Yeah, and Ellie only comes into the scene like right now, so it was, I would say John Hammond is somewhat the mentor in this, but also it's a little bit flipped in that he's a bad mentor. Not all mentors are old, they just happen to be old sometimes, because, old equals wise. Very rarely is it a child, except, well, and you could maybe argue for Logan, but I don't think that's the case because Professor Xavier is there. That was a great movie, by the way. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, so yeah, Ellie is usually the supporting factor of these scenes, or like, she usually comes in a little bit later and is sort of adding in different, like she's supporting Alan's claims as, like, I'm not trying to, like, the way I'm saying this right now kind of sounds sexist, but it's not sexist, it's just plotist. The color is really weird on this. I don't like what they did as opposed to the VHS. Anyway, maybe it's also just the 3D glasses, but I don't think so. It looks too dark and brown. I don't like it. That also sounded racist. I'm not, oh my god. I'm talking about within the context of a movie. I'm not talking, when I say things, it's about plot and it's about, oh my god, I'm just not going to recover from that. It's alright, nobody's listening anyway. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, another good example of Ellie sort of being the supporting factor is during the dinner scene when they're all around the table. Alan again has a long monologue thing. Ian does as well, but he's a comic relief. And so, oh yeah, that's a good point. This is one of the rare movies where the comic relief has, like, a whole monologue. I think maybe in Dungeons and Dragons, but that's not a good example. Yeah, she sort of interjects here and there, but it's Alan who's sort of has the last word, kind of. Like, Ian has his speech, and then Alan is the one who's sort of driving the whole thing. I wonder what kind of thing they're drinking, like what brand or like whatever you call the thing that things are. I don't know how licensing and all that works. I know some of it, because I think, like, trademarks and copyright and stuff, like, that interests me somewhat, but I see a logo in the background of this too. Oh my god. If that's, like, a phoenix logo for some sort of alcohol or something, that's kind of interesting within the, like, Tishtapafu mythology, but, like, that obviously is not... Also, there's a dog. I don't think I've ever really paid attention to that dog. You know, like, in all likelihood, it'll come back into strip of food. Oh, okay. This is a good example. Somebody was saying to me, like, because a good way to know who the protagonist is whose point of view is it told from. It's not always the case, but there's also times when it'll cut away from the protagonist's point of view. It's just, this is another villain thing. Mostly when it cuts away from the protagonist, it's usually, like, because you want to focus on the villains, because obviously the protagonist can't really be around the villain while they're scheming or whatever, because, you know, then they'll know about it and there's no conflict, really, or tension. So you don't have to follow a protagonist, like, they don't have to be on screen all the time, always, you know, doing stuff. Another interesting example of this is in Titanic, where Rose is number one telling the story as the framing device, and also she is the protagonist. But people point out, you know, it cuts away to people when she's not there, so how would she remember that? And it's like, well, that's just, like, stylization. Yes, it doesn't make sense within the logic of, like, the movie and the framing device, but that's the thing that movies do, guys. Just let it go. Unless Rose is secretly, like, God or something. Conspiracies. What was I saying? Yeah, anyway, so it will cut away from the protagonist sometimes. And, you know, sometimes it's not the protagonist really narrating the story, especially when it's just, like, a framing device. Like, another good example of framing device and flashback is in Phantom of the Opera, where it's not a good example, but it's not a good movie, but it's a good example in that it's kind of bad. It's actually Raoul who's remembering, and they keep cutting back to it in the movie, which really sucks, but he's not the protagonist. He's actually the love interest, and so yeah, but it's Christine's story, and the Phantom of the Opera is the antagonist. So, anyway, I think that's that's the first time Ellie has had the first word in a scene. And it was one, but I'm not saying that, like, mathematically that matters. I'm just pointing it out. What was I saying? Yeah, Phantom of the Opera is kind of an incompetent movie in many ways, but it is another example of, like, framing device, etc. So, yeah. Framing devices are interesting. They're not always necessary. Sometimes, though, I like when it's integrated into the plot. I think Forrest Gump might be an example of this. I haven't watched the movie all the way through because I started it in, we had this class that was called, like, multimedia or something in my high school, which was basically, like, it was the crap version of Photoshop class, because first of all, they didn't teach us Photoshop, they taught us, like, Adobe Fireworks, which is the most useless program ever. I mean, like, you know, the point is that even though it's kind of good, you know, like, Photoshop is just the thing you use. Like, that's like teaching somebody, I was gonna use Paint as an example, but that's too extreme. Okay, it's like teaching someone to use the notes feature on their iPad or iPod or whatever, instead of using, like, Microsoft Word. Like, there's just, like, if you're going to know a program, you should know the one that's, like, known for what it does, and then branch off from there. You shouldn't start with, like, just something that's, like, a very limited version of it. Anyway, I don't even know what the point of Fireworks is. If it's supposed to be, like, Photoshop and Lightroom or whatever it's called, but I don't know. They probably just, like, my school probably got it on a discount, and they're like, hey, let's teach the kids this to pretend like we're equipping them for, like, the real world, which now uses computers, and we're so far behind. Which is kind of a Jurassic Park thing. But, anyway, oh yeah, the seatbelt thing. It's kind of interesting that, okay, so the seatbelt thing is a metaphor, that it's a metaphor for the theme, and Grant does it. That's not concrete evidence, but it is kind of indicative. It is kind of indicative of it. You know, a lot of things, you know, like, alone, they're not, like, evidence of him being the protagonist, but put together, it's, like, strongly, I can't say words today. You know what I mean? You can answer that. But, yeah. Oh, I haven't been paying attention to the 3-act structure. Okay, so the call to adventure obviously is when the helicopter arrives. Not at the island, it arrives at the, dig site. And then there's usually, this is not, well, okay, I say usually, but it's just sort of in what people have come to know, but there's a lot of examples where it's not true, but there's usually like a refusal of the quest, and then they decide to go. Good example of this isn't The Hobbit. But yeah, I've found there's not always a refusal, and if there is, it's like really brief, and it's not really worth mentioning. Maybe it is just as kind of a trope, but it's included in the whole Joseph Campbell thing, which is like the basis of the 3x structure usually. It's the hero's journey, 3x structure, same difference. So yeah, I'm gonna be sort of using those two things interchangeably because they're very similar and related. It's like, one thing connects to the other and, some ideas overlap. Again, we're sort of cutting away from the protagonist, and it's for a villainous character. Like, I don't mean villainous as in like moo ha 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 ha. I just mean like he's antagonistic towards stuff initially and mostly throughout. Like when he realizes, hey, this dinosaur park is a good idea. When he supports it, we're not supposed to be supporting it because danger. Did that have a 29 on the front? Oh my god, it totally did. And then an 18. That's interesting. 29th is my birthday. And I was 18 at one point in my life, so what does this mean? I think I was actually 18 when I wrote Tistripafu. Was I? How old am I now? 21? Yeah, so that makes sense. I was 18. So that's really creepy. Just a coincidence. I don't actually believe that. Anyway. Oh yeah, and Grant is the first to notice the thing, and then Ellie is only like, she's made aware of it, afterwards. And also another thing maybe to talk about is that deleted leaf scene where she plucks the leaf off the tree. They took it out because it wasn't really necessary, and if she was a protagonist, I feel like maybe they would have left it in because it would, not just because it would focus on her more, because it would like explain how she's first encountering this sort of de-extinction thing. But since, Grant is the paleontologist and she's the paleobotanist, it makes more sense for him to be the first to sort of react to the dinosaurs, which, plants are cool, but dinosaurs are cooler. I don't mean to diss anyone who likes plants, but this is a movie, like, nobody comes to see Jurassic Park for the plants, like, maybe one person. But most people are here for the dinosaurs and, all that comes with it. And also, I realize probably some of you didn't like, what I say about, people come to see the dinosaurs, because that's not true. There are good things, like, in it, but, the aesthetic and, just, like, cool stuff that's contained within a movie, it's there as, like, icing on the cake, and it draws people in, but then you, like, stay for the characters and stuff, because most good movies have characters, but it's good when a movie has good characters and the, like, theme of it is dinosaurs. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying all dinosaur movies are good, I'm just saying that I like to see dinosaurs, and bad dinosaur movies are bad, good dinosaur movies are good. That's all. Oh, yeah. So, they're moving in herds. Also, he has the whimsical line. Again, that's a little piece of evidence. It's weird. The Parasaurolophus have like a little red patch on their side the way I'm seeing it. Maybe I'm just hallucinating, or like maybe that is their color pattern and I'm just like stupid and not very informed in like, hey, hand on the knee. Not very informed in like Jurassic Park. Like, I know some stuff about Jurassic Park, but it's weird the stuff that I do know. Like, I know some obscure things, but there are things that I should by all means know and don't. So yeah. Vehicles I'm not that interested in. I know that's kind of like a stereotype of autism, but my autism does not align with like interest in vehicles. In fact, I find them quite boring. Mostly. I just like dinosaurs a lot, and that's where my special interest lies. I mean, like, vehicles are kind of cool. Like, I was just sort of playing Lego Jurassic World the other day and, like, unlocking all the vehicles and seeing all the things. It's kind of cool to see all the different ones, but it's not, like, the statistics of which one goes fastest and which one. It's just like I like them as art, and so I like drive in the funny looking ones, like the little buggy, you know, just stuff like that. Also, I think Grant had the last line in that scene too. Protagonists sometimes have the first and last line of a scene, or like just a lot of lines, but not always. Just kind of thing. I wonder what his line was that he missed. Like, I wonder what it was specifically. Like, you can kind of have an idea generally, but the 3D is really good in this right now. Like when he's standing there, I for a second I forgot that he wasn't actually there because he was in front of the TV screen, and so that made kind of like a my brain did a dumb. I think I'm gonna go get a drink because my mouth is making really gross noises. Like, okay, I'll be back in a sec. Don't pause. Ugh, I don't know if you heard that, but I just sort of like knocked over a maraca. There's like two clown costumes like right on the ground there. I'm not gonna explain why, but there is a reason. I just think it's cooler if I don't give you the reason so you think that I just have clown outfits. Mosquito. Speaking of stuff, I was going to do like a commentary track on Jurassic Park where I talked about what I thought of it as a kid and like all my misconceptions and how I saw everything, because like I do have very strong memories of seeing this as a kid. I might do that later. I'm not. I could watch Jurassic Park every day, honestly, but it might take a little while because that's like 2 hours and a bit out of my life that I'm kind of busy with stuff right now, a little bit. I wonder who that guy is, like what he's doing now, like as an actor, or if he's dead. On that note, I always get the actors of Muldoon and Roland Tembo mixed up because they kind of like feel similar roles and look the same to me. Like I can tell them apart if I like think about it, but sometimes I get mixed up. And they're both dead now, and so that kind of like confuses things for me, but at the same time, since they're both dead, I don't have to like remember which one is the one who is dead. That sounds really awful, and it is. But anyway, I'm not sure how that virtual reality would like help because like it's just like two power gloves, and like I love my tablet, but sometimes you just need a mouse. Um, Maybe I just don't have it set up right, or I'm not like the programs I use don't really work that great with a tablet. I'm looking to get Photoshop. I really need it. um, yeah. One of the things that I think people get a little bit confused with in Jurassic Park is whether or not it really wants you to like the idea of bringing dinosaurs back. Because dinosaurs are presented in a whimsical way, but on the other hand, they attack and stuff, and there's all these messages about genetic modification, etc. Alan always has the first line. I'm noticing that a lot. There's only a few cases where Ellie does. Um, but I think Jurassic Park is like, it's not about the idea of bringing dinosaurs back. It's about, genetic power and how people control it through dinosaurs, because I think Michael Crichton said that the only real thing that you would want to, or that you would, and I was going to say need, but it is a want thing because of the nature of it, you'd want to bring them back for entertainment, and he couldn't really think of another way. Now there's like weaponization and stuff, but there's no like need to bring the dinosaurs back in the same way there is a need to bring back that one plant that the seeds were eaten by the dodo, and now the plant is dying because the dodo poop helped the seeds with the fruit. And anyway, or like, you know, other animals that are near extinction that are like crucial to the environment and stuff. But dinosaurs, like, it would be more trouble than it would give you to, like, you know what I mean. But you know, I don't think entertainment is a bad thing, but that's just what Michael Crichton said. Then it would be interesting to see dinosaurs and to, you know, learn stuff about them, even if they're not 100% accurate. Also, I want to point out in this scene later, it's Grant holding the raptor. So, you know, raptor metaphor, he's holding like an important thing, and he's also the one who transitions into the next scene with the raptors, and he's strongly tied to raptors because that's like his thing. So, like, he's tied to the main antagonist of the movie, so. I guess, okay, the main force is like genetic stuff, but that's like an abstract notion. The like embodiment of that is the dinosaurs. So everyone looks orange in this scene right now. I don't know if that's the color correcting or if it was always that way. I don't think it was always that way. It's a little weird. They look like Oompa Loompas. Like, it's super orange. Ian's all in shadow, that's funny. It just occurred to me that I might, like, monetize this and there might be ads in between, so you would probably have to, like, pause it to, like the movie and to align with, like, I don't know. I might be greedy for monetizing this, but, like, I'm not gonna make any money off it anyway. I have, like, 6 cents in my account right now, and that's for, like, several months. It's just, like, you know, whatever, just for fun. You could always just use ad block. Why don't you have ad block? Are you watching this in, like, a browser other than Chrome? Because, like, if you are, what's wrong with you? That's an awesome necklace. Okay, here's a monologue from the Comic Relief, which is also, I don't think he was, like, that comedic in the novel. I might have to reread it. From what I understand, he had a little comedic scene in the second book, because they were kind of indirectly making fun of this. I was actually, like, to further prove that Claire was the protagonist of Jurassic World, I was going to, like, have 2 timers going and time how long her and Owen were, like, on screen, but that's, like, just, that's a mathematical thing, and really, when it comes to, like, 3-act structures and stuff, you need to, like, feel it, not think through it, so. We're still in the first act, by the way. Second act is when things sort of turn wrong and are a bit sadder. Oh, poor cow. I guess steer. Is it a steer? It is a steer. Oh. What difference would it make if they just shot the cow first instead of having it be, like, brutally ripped apart? Like, would the raptors care? Would they? Maybe they would. I know there's some snakes that, like, refuse to eat if you don't at least wiggle the mouse around for them to, like, pretend it's alive and that they're, like, actually doing something. It's like a confidence thing, I guess. I don't really like those shots that much because the plants are blurry and I feel like that's a little bit weird. Again, it's Ellen interacting. You know, it, like, okay, so the thing, I'm not trying to, like, diss anyone who thinks that Ellie is a protagonist. Like, I'm not saying that you're stupid for believing that. It would be cool if she was, and she is in, like, Tistrapafu and stuff, but this isn't her story. I mean, like, I love Ellie Sattler. I wish there was more of her in the movie, but it would also break the movie if she was sort of in it more, and so I don't want that. It's like, you know, it's like when you have a cake, you want to eat it all, but you're gonna feel like shit if you eat it all. And so if you just have one piece, then you've had some cake and you're happy about that and you don't throw up. And there's more cake to enjoy later, and like the sequels, even though Ellie is only in one sequel and it's the worst one so far. Has anyone seen that movie where Jeff Goldblum is like an alien and he's like blue and then I think it's called like Earth Girls Are Easy. Oh my god, the phone is ringing. I hope whoever is on the phone does not like start going on the message thing. Okay, there we go. The robot voice is going. Okay, so this is one of the first times Ellie is introduced, like, the first in a scene and has the first. Oh my god, that freaking phone is annoying. I hope somebody, like, answers that. I think they did. Wow, even though, like, the lens flare and that was 3D, that was interesting. Unless I'm just hallucinating, that's also possible. There's my birth year, 1995. Pie charts! I'm a very intelligent person, as you can see. I'm very insightful. It's kind of interesting that the lens flares are, like, three-dimensional, because that kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it's, like, a strictly camera thing. Like, human eyes do not get lens flares, really. We get kind of something like it, but it's not the same. Because we don't have lenses, we have, like, biological stuff. So, I don't know. I see the logic behind it. I think it'd be worse if it wasn't 3D, but yeah, because then it would just sort of mold to the shape of someone's face as the like flare goes over it, and then it would just look weird because it would look like somebody's face is like colored wrong in places. Like when you have a 3D model and you just move the texture over it, and it just like the eyes are in the wrong places or whatever. It's not a very good comparison, but whatever. Did that say tennis? Jurassic tennis? I think it did. That's unless it was like another word and it just like looked like tennis and it was like, but what other word? I can't think of anything right now. There's probably one that's really obvious, but I just sort of thought that was funny because of the Rogue One thing I wrote where there was like hybrid dinosaurs playing tennis for no reason. I think that's what the line was. Nature didn't really select the dinosaurs for extinction. Like on some level it did, but it's not like that mass extinction was not about like earthly stuff. It was like a freaking rock that hit, and you know, so like a lot of things died. It's not like it was day to day natural selection. It was sort of a cataclysmic thing. Yeah, Ellie does get a little bit of a monologue here, but it's kind of brief and it's like the middle one, so it's like the least impactful. Just from like I know I said math is not really a thing here. It's not even math that I'm talking about, but it's like some sort of weird number thing that I have no word for. Yeah, and see now he's like introducing Grant by name, and it's like his is the last thing, and so it's the most impactful because it's like the final point. It's like the last paragraph of something. I had Chilean sea bass once. It even had those little orange things on it. I don't know if it's ground up carrots or what, but it had that. I think it was something like lemony. I don't remember. Lawyers. When I say, okay, some people might not get this, but when I say having the last word in a scene, I don't mean the literal last word, I mean the last, like, thematic word. Because, yes, Grant is not the last person to literally speak in that scene, but he's the last one to speak about that scene as it happens in, like, the metaphorical way and have, like, and the rest is just sort of like interruptions and, like, stuff. Yeah, there's Ellie again. She's sometimes, a lot of the times, actually closer to the camera than Alan is. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, though. I'd say they're about equal at this point, but I haven't been counting. Man, that weather looks so nice. I wish I was there. Freaking Canada, man. LOL. I hate myself for saying that. Da, 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 da. Again, we're focusing on Grant. I feel like this movie is making its points without, like, me having to say things, but, like, I don't want to be condescending or anything, because, like, you're not objectively wrong if you have an opinion on a movie. It's just, like, some opinions are more valid than others, and if you justify something enough, you can sort of make it. But even then, like, if you justify a wrong point of view so well that other people believe it, it doesn't necessarily make it right, because within the context of production and like all that stuff, and also intent matters somewhat. Sometimes people fail at their intent, but in movies, assuming that everything goes right, intent is supposed to be like important-ish. And I know probably some people will say, like, oh, actually, it's wrong when more people believe a wrong point of view, then it becomes right because it's common. And it's like, yeah, well, no, maybe, kind of. But it's really more complicated than that because, like, you know, at one point in time, a lot of people thought that, I was going to use the sun going around the earth as an example, but that's not quite right because it's like, an actual fact and stuff, and instead of like a subjective thing. Okay, maybe here's an example. If someone, in one time they said, "Wow, the CGI in let's use Jurassic Park, even though Jurassic Park CGI is still pretty good." They say like, "Oh, the CGI in Jurassic Park is so great. It's the most amazing thing ever. They look like they're actually there." Looking back on it now, the Raptors especially, like, it is kind of dated and stuff. And so, while they may have been right at the time that this is the most realistic it looks like, nowadays, if you just went into the theater and saw it, like, the effects are still good, don't get me wrong, but, like, you can tell that it's CGI. You can tell what's a puppet or animatronic, whatever. And so, it's true that at the time it looked like the best thing people had ever seen, but it didn't look as, like, now it wouldn't look as good, and back then it didn't look like real life because, like, it's just that people hadn't seen, like, I remember when Dinosaur came out, even a few years after Dinosaur came out, I remember watching it and like, oh, the CGI in this is actually better than Walking with Dinosaurs in my opinion, and that was weird to me as a kid. But and I'm like, wow, they almost look like they're lifelike. But if you actually do a side by side comparison, no, they do sort of look different. Not just the dinosaurs. I'm not because you can't do a side by side comparison with dinosaurs, really. But like, let's use the lemurs for example. Do a side by side comparison. The fur has a little bit of uncanniness. It's just that at the time it looked really good, and you couldn't imagine something better than that except for real life. And so you said, "Wow, this is close enough to real life." Because it's not like this is like Jaws 3D where all this CGI looks like there's no way you could ever mistake that for, you know, something real. It's that when you get close enough to reality that it's like, you know, there's also the uncanny valley and stuff, but I'm way off track. But it's just because the movie is making its points for me, so I may as well talk about other stuff. And what was I talking about? Yeah, being right and wrong. It's like, there's a lot of debate to be had about that. But, just because a lot of people believe in something doesn't mean that it's necessarily... Because you know what, right and wrong is just perception, and you're going to say, well, if it's perception, then the majority would be, like... Because, you know... when it's a majority, then the perception is common, and then if it's common, then it must be, like, what is considered right or wrong, because majority plus viewpoint equals, like, subjectively right or wrong. So, but, yeah, no, it's just, like, it's kind of, like, I don't know how to explain it, but it is kind of more intricate than that. I know that's really vague and it makes me sound like I just want to be right about everything, but. And sometimes things can change, like perceptions of like, and in film and stuff, like if you watch an old movie and back then they said, oh, this person is the protagonist because that's how movies work and that's how film is. But film as a genre, it sort of changes, and so the requirements for what is like a protagonist and not, it like, I know protagonists are not just in film, but I'm just using it as an example. Like, the things we've come to expect kind of change the context of works of art, but in some ways it doesn't. I don't know what I just went on a huge tangent for no reason. Oh, one thing I was just reminded of is somebody said that in Jurassic Park during the raptor scene in the background there's a cliff that looks like a raptor, and I've never really been able to confirm because like I haven't been to the filming site, like if they would have bothered to like superimpose it in, or if they're just like, hey, this cliff looks like a raptor, so let's film here. There's one incident of that in incidents into whatever of that in Jurassic World where I saw a dinosaur in the cliffs, but you know what, that could also be coincidence because things can look like things. The human brain is designed to recognize patterns even if it's coincidental. Oh, again, Ellie's closer to the camera. But that's probably because she's the focus of this scene, though. This is the one of the first scenes where she's like the centerpiece of it has been like her dialogue and her exchange. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I don't know if people are just seeing raptors in the hills or if that was put there intentionally. Somebody should go and like figure out if that's true or not, so that wherever I saw it on like IMDb trivia or whatever, somebody can correct that if it's wrong or like leave it if it's right. I was gonna make a goat sound just now, but I realized my voice is not ready for that. She referred to the dinosaur as a guy, which happens a lot. That's an interesting point, kind of. The, um, the fact that even though it's made clear several times that the dinosaurs are all girls, that sometimes people think of them as guys. And somebody's gonna say probably, well, nobody's gonna comment on this, but if people did comment, they'd say, oh, well, in the book, the Tyrannosaurus, they said they call them boys just because. That's not what's influencing people to sort of think that way, though, where they make that mistake. I'm not gonna say it's like sexism, but it's kind of like a weird kind of sexism that's like within us, that we sort of see animals in different roles and assume what they are based on that. Like how a lot of kids think that like all dogs are men and all cats are women just because of the way they act. It's not necessarily like a bad or good thing. It's just sort of something that happens and it's a little bit unavoidable, but it's good to train yourself like not to think that way just so that you're less wrong. Because if you constantly are thinking to yourself, oh, well, the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. Okay, I know they changed gender, don't bring that up. What I'm saying is, if a dinosaur is like Rexy, for example, the Rexy is female. That's just a thing. If you train yourself to like remember that fact, then then you're just right about it, and you don't have to like risk someone saying, "Oh, how could you be a Jurassic Park fan? You don't even know that the Rex is a female." Um, yeah, what was I saying? Oh my god. Yeah, it's just like okay, there's just like some things that we grow up hearing or thinking that like are it's not really. Sorry, I'm just gonna interrupt myself for a second. This is another scene with Sattler, but it's also focused on Grant and his reaction. Like maybe if she was the protagonist, she would be the one to notice. Like she would be like, because this whole chaos theory thing is somewhat a side note in this scene because the tension and what the audience is interested in theoretically is what Grant is looking at, because this side conversation is just sort of a casual little thing that has like a thematic purpose and is going to be like reincorporated later, but it's sort of like in the background, like in what the film is thinking, if you know what I mean. You probably don't know what I mean, whatever. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, things that people just sort of know but think about wrong. It's like, when people mistake monkeys and apes, you have to train yourself to like not make that mistake. When people mistake venomous and poisonous, which I am ashamed to admit I have done several times, you just, it's not your fault necessarily for making or I don't know what I mean talking about. It's not your fault for believing these things, but like it's good to train yourself just to be less wrong, because like it's not a bad thing to be wrong, but it's a good thing to learn, and it just makes things clearer and better for everyone. Because the more people make mistakes like that, like the kind of mistakes that can be transferred to other people, it's like saying like. I got into the habit of saying like in the middle of a sentence because people said it around me, but if nobody did that, I probably wouldn't have adopted it. So yeah. It's just sometimes people screw up your life unintentionally. It's not their fault. It's just that they like get you into the habit of something or encourage you to do something. Like I was eating Doritos the other day, and it was like the green kind. They're not green themselves. The bag is, and I gave one to someone, and now they're hooked on the Doritos. And it's like, has that made their life better or worse? Who knows? But it's just like the things you do affect other people, and so it's best not to spread misinformation. And then there's also I can't speak. There's also always going to be that kind of person who's like, well, who cares if I'm wrong? It's just the thing that's said. It's like, well, no. You know what? If you make the mistake of like venomous and poisonous, yes, a lot of people don't understand the distinction, but that doesn't mean that you should continue to be misinformed, because those two words have very specific purposes that could actually be useful and help clarify things. And it's just like, and you know what, I get defensive too. Sometimes I say, oh, well, whatever, I'm right, you're wrong, because perception and stuff. But you know what, perception is flawed sometimes, and so we need to acknowledge when we're stupid. And I am stupid very, very much. I don't even care that I just said that because nobody's watching right now. That's a really cool animatronic. Oh, I was thinking the other day of building like a Claire Stegoceratops suit. Like I've been thinking about that for a while, just to like, like either kind of like Pumbaa from The Lion King, the musical kind of suit, or like if I do a mascot costume, people are gonna think, oh my god, furry. But like just because it would be cool to like cosplay it or whatever. I don't think you're supposed to do your own characters at like conventions and stuff. But you know what? I can think of a lot of uses for a dinosaur suit. Most of them sexual. I'm just kidding, by the way. Oh, what was I saying? Oh yeah. I've thought about it a billion times, but I've looked into it kind of deeply, and they are very expensive. But someday I would like to do that, to just buy one, have it made, because I can't make things myself. I'm really bad at like craftsmanship and stuff. I remember somebody on Jurassic Park Legacy, when it was still up, they said one of their childhood misconceptions was that when they heard that, they thought that dinosaurs dropped onto the island, and I think that's kind of cute. I haven't been talking a lot about the 3X structure or protagonist yet. Oh, okay. Actually, no, that's a good point. This is kind of, I think, the transition into the second act. If I remember correctly, the second act is usually beginning when the protagonist can't turn back from the conflict. So I would interpret this as now they're all out there in the park, and it's like that's when shit sort of starts to go wrong. And, oh my god, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to say shit and have whatever. Looks like there's mangoes in there. Anyway, so and that's not for every story. Obviously, I'm going to say that a lot probably, unless I don't, because not every story is the same. It's just that there's certain patterns sometimes. I guess while we're here, I should probably talk about things that don't conform to patterns, and why, like, sometimes when you don't conform to a pattern, your movie turns out bad. Sometimes it turns out good. And it's all still a matter of opinion. But the reason for this is like, uh, it's not that all movies have to be the same or that all movies have to be different. It's just, it's safe to stick to this three act structure, but just to change it up a little bit, like enough, so that people don't get bored. It's also good to, play around and stuff. But sometimes you really can screw it up by removing an element because it doesn't feel emotionally satisfying. Like, okay, the reason the three act structure exists is because it's satisfying for an audience, and over, history, whatever, for a very, very long time, people have come to decide, yeah, definitely this is the second act now. Anyway, people have come to decide that it's, this is just the way that plots tend to work. It's like a format that, it's like songs, there's, chorus, all the different verses, and not all songs are the same, but they have similar chords sometimes, and, it's not just banging on a piano, so, and, sometimes when you bang on a piano, you can make something good, I know, whatever. Um, that's a really obvious theme. I don't like that in the prop. That was ick. Um, yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, so just the three act structure. I know a lot of people hate it, but it's not an issue of hating it. It's just an issue of sometimes you get bored of it, but it does still work. Like most Disney films, for example, follow a pretty rigid three act structure, and they're, at least serviceable. They're emotionally satisfying mostly, with a few exceptions, but general audiences like it because there's a beginning, middle, end, and there's a change in the character, and you learn something. It's, that's just how it is. I guess a thing to compare the three act structure to is like getting to work every morning. You'll probably take the same route. Like if you take a different route or like try a shortcut, you might get there faster, but you also might get yourself lost or like make yourself late. And there's generally more of a risk of making yourself late or making yourself get lost because odds are if you've been doing what you do to get to work every day, you probably know what you're doing. That's probably the best way. You've probably experimented a lot. But, sometimes you'll get lost, but you'll find something more interesting, and so that's also where a passive protagonist comes into play, because a lot of Hollywood movies, they will have an active protagonist with a defined goal, and then sort of indie movies or art movies sometimes will have just sort of a meandering pace, sort of like Italian neorealism, where you're just sort of wandering around and it's episodic and just things sort of happen. It's more like real life, but it's also it's emotionally satisfying in a way, but it's also because sometimes when you go to the movies, you just want to escape real life or make sense of real life, and you make sense of it by telling yourself lies and like sort of formatting it in a way that makes sense to you. Hence the three act structure. It's like an essay. You're organizing information into a way that makes sense of it. That's why you don't usually show characters going to the bathroom if it has nothing to do with the story, because we don't need to see everything that happens. Movies are cut and edited in a way that shows just what is important to the story and the theme, etc. Otherwise it would be just like dream logic, where you don't really understand your dreams usually, because things just sort of happen. So anyway, yeah, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but that's about what it is. And I mean, that's not to say that all Hollywood movies have an active protagonist. Some great movies have a passive protagonist. It just all depends on the movie, and it also depends on your taste and what you're looking for, what mood you're in. Also, we don't see Ellie for a while. Because she's off staying back with. If she was a protagonist, we would probably see what she does with the trike, because it may seem like, oh well, that's so boring that she would be what would she would just be carrying the trike or whatever, like in the Jurassic Park game, but the fact is that driving back to the whatchamacallit is boring as well up until the T-Rex. But we're following Alan because first of all he's in the car that's being affected, and second of all, since he's the protagonist, you need to see how the shutdown like affects him, and so the boring thing that he's doing is more important than the boring thing that Ellie's doing. I don't know, maybe like what she's doing with the trike is really, really interesting and I'm just dumb. But you know what I mean, probably. I'm just joking. I wonder if anyone has a list of all the product placement in Jurassic Park. Like the really unnoticeable stuff, like what brand of cigarette that is and whatever. I don't know if you can tell cigarettes apart, but whatever. Did I say product placement or did I use the wrong word? I feel like I'm kind of tired right now, so I don't know if I'm doing things right. Oh, again, we're showing the villainous character, and the protagonist is nowhere to be seen. And you might be saying, well, what about Hammond, though? We're also showing him. Well, that's because they're figuring out what the villainous character did, and so it's related to the villainy, therefore it's not the protagonist in this case. Also, it's related to what's happening to Alan right now. Like, if we didn't show... If the car just, like, stopped and we didn't know why exactly, like, if we could be told it later, but if we don't see it happening, there's less tension. It's like, you know, showing there's a bomb under the table. Bunch of people, it's the Alfred Hitchcock thing, so this is like a common thing. There's a bomb under the table, you show it while there's people playing cards or whatever, and you wait a bit and they're talking, and the tension is whether the bomb will or will not go off, as opposed to if they're just playing cards and you don't see the bomb and then the bomb just goes off and you're like, oh, there's a bomb under the table. That's like a surprise, but there's no tension. It's just like a few seconds of wah. So that's the tension in here, is that you're like, oh my gosh, are things going to go even worse? Are they going to be able to recuperate? And then the T-Rex happens, and so you're like, oh no. And then there's more tension. I like that little exchange, that's cute. The T-Rex breakout scene is also like the first rising action point. Rising action points are a little bit weird because they can vary in number and they're not always like, you know, and I don't like them very much. Not that I hate them, it's just like I don't like defining them because they're the most random, usually, of the 3-act structure elements. But anyway, this is the first, like, major thing that happens for things to get screwed up. Like, I mean, if the power just went off and that was that would kind of be inconvenient, but it wouldn't be, like, putting the characters through much of a struggle, you know what I mean? And so the T-Rex breakout is the first major thing that happens, and Alan Grant is here and Ellie Sattler is not. So that indicates, you know, like when shit's going down, the protagonist kind of has to be there. Like the Indominus Rex breakout scene, Claire's in her car and she's driving. Okay, like Owen is also there, but Claire is doing a boring thing. She's driving in the car and talking to people. I don't mean boring in the sense that, like, but what I mean is that compared to, like, being chased by a dinosaur as Owen is, she's doing the boring thing, but the movie feels the need to cut back to her because she's the protagonist and she has a say in what's happening and there's tension and she doesn't know what's going on, and when she's figuring all this out, she has sort of a reaction of what the audience should be having, where, oh my god, is it going to get out? And yeah, I guess everyone kind of has that reaction in Jurassic World, in like the characters, but she sort of has it intensely because she has left the scene, and so she feels like somewhat responsible for that. I'm trying to think of a leg joke in time. Hey guys, sorry for that little break. I just got called by my boss for work. I'm doing a little volunteer project with videos. I've been sneaking dinosaurs in, don't tell anyone. Sorry, so I guess you're gonna have to, like, I don't know if you're watching the movie right now along with this. I don't really care. So where I stopped was kind of the T-Rex swallowing the goat, so I'll do a 3, 2, 1 countdown. If it's a little out of sync, who cares? Alright. 3, 2, 1. Oh god, it's not going. 3, 2, 3, 3. Okay, you know what? I'm just. Okay. Oh god, did I break everything? Oh, it looks like it's going. Oh, now 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now the T-Rex is looking down at them and blood, etc. Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, I was thinking I was going to get a phone call. I was going to look up what happens when you record and there's a phone call on the iPhone. But then I didn't. Because I'm lazy. My phone is at 32% and has been at 32% for a little while. That's interesting. Yeah, so, I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Did you hear my arm and a leg joke? It was really bad and obvious and dumb. But whatever. I wonder if it'd be more expensive or cheaper to build a T-Rex animatronic, like, identical to that one. Not right now, it's CGI right now. But I wonder how expensive it would be, whether it'd be cheaper or not. Like, I guess if they had better materials or, like, whatever, there'd be probably no way to really tell. Then, you know, like inflation and all that money stuff I don't understand. Also, somebody was talking to me about protagonists in a separate conversation, and they were using the example of, because a lot of examples I use. I either use Disney movies, usually The Lion King, or Star Wars, or like just, you know, well-known movies that a lot of people have seen and that also have a very known structure. And so they were saying to me, like, well, what about Han Solo and Princess Leia? Aren't they protagonists? Because they're certainly on the good side, and they have a lot of screen time, and they have, like, stuff they do, and they, like, have a lot of effect on the plot. And the thing is, like, the protagonist doesn't necessarily have a lot of the effect on the plot. Like, they don't always do the most important things. Like, if you think about it, usually a villain in most good movies has more power than the protagonist, and that's also a source of tension. But they usually are the ones to change the plot the most because they're the ones who fuck things up and stuff, right? And they do so very severely, and so the protagonist usually has to undo that. But when it kind of is a pet peeve of mine when people don't understand story structure or like protagonists and what that means. Because I don't know, it's just stuff I deal with, and it just annoys me. But just because someone is the good guy does not mean that they're a protagonist. They might, you can kind of stretch the definition of protagonist to mean like anyone for whom the movie's supporting, but that's kind of like a wrong definition in the same sense that like oh, I'm trying to think of an example. It's like if you were to say that okay, like Transformers 5 or whichever one is the one with the robot dinosaurs, if you were to say that that's a dinosaur movie, like, yeah, there's kind of dinosaurs in it, but first of all, they're not. Well, I guess there's dinosaurs at the beginning. I haven't seen the whole thing, but whatever. Or like saying Tree of Life is a dinosaur movie because there's a dinosaur in it. It may have a dinosaur in it, but it's not a dinosaur movie in the sense that people think of dinosaur movies, and so it's like, it's stretching it, but you're also using the term wrong by stretching it, kind of. So protagonist is there's usually only one. Sometimes there's more, but usually it's only one in a movie, and it's kind of what some people sometimes say is the main character, but not always also. And it's not even always a good guy. Like, sometimes you could be following, like, for example, in Megamind, a villainous character is the protagonist because you're seeing the story from their perspective, through their arc, you know, that stuff. And so you could call Han Solo and Princess Leia protagonists, but you would be mostly wrong. They could, at the very most, be considered deuteragonists. Han Solo is comedic relief. Dead lawyer. Princess Leia before she was Luke's sister, she may have kind of been a love interest, but a really non-love interest. Um, I'm not gonna say that she's like the damsel in distress, because she is a quest of like a rescue mission, but that doesn't like, but it's not. I don't mean it in a derogatory way. Like, people are gonna say, oh well, she's not just like Princess Peach because she actually fights back and does stuff like, yeah, okay, but it doesn't. It's not because she's a woman or something, but at one point she is the one who they are rescuing. Therefore, she is an object of a quest. It is, it's not necessarily because she's a woman in the context that I'm talking about it. But anyway, she's not a protagonist, really. Oh, that's another good point. I said earlier on that protagonist is usually introduced earlier in the movie than a lot of characters. Not the first, though. Princess Leia is introduced earlier than Luke, but she's not the protagonist because she's absent for a lot of the movie and she doesn't really have a say in the final battle, really. Okay, a good way to actually pick out the protagonist is how they affect the climax and if they have a direct hand in it. I'm told that the last Hobbit movie has a weird thing where the protagonist doesn't directly do the thing that ends the climax or resolves it. But that's more of a like exception to the rule, and I heard it wasn't very well done. I have yet to see the movie though. I'm terrible. I still haven't seen the second one either. I have it in like 3D in my movie shelf, right, like sitting right there. I almost pulled it out instead of this one because I can't see too good no more. Anyway, so yeah, so there's misconceptions about the protagonist. It's not always the good guy. It's not always the person on screen the most. It's not always the most powerful person or the person with the most effect on the plot. In fact, usually it's a kind of powerless person, because if the protagonist has like all the power in the world, then there's not much of a struggle because they would just be able to like beat anyone who opposed them, like the antagonist. Oh, by the way, Ellie's back now. It's been like 10 minutes. Since I took a mental note and I said to myself, maybe you should like keep track of like how long Ellie's gone, just because. But she was gone for a little while longer than what I'm thinking of. You can go back in your recording if this is accurate and just like because there was that little break, but you could see how long she was approximately gone for. Not to say that doesn't make her a protagonist. It's all of the little things that add up that don't make her a protagonist. And it's not just the fact that she is not the protagonist, it's the fact that Alan is the protagonist. Because there are a lot of things that characters cannot be, but what one character is not does not necessarily define what another character is. Like, just because Anakin is not the comic relief in the Phantom Menace, it doesn't mean that Padme is, because Jar Jar Binks is. So you have to, in order to figure out what role, and not all stories have all of these roles, but in order to figure out what role a character has, you have to sort of see them, yes, within comparison to the other characters, but also within themselves. You have to have both. It's like, that's how evidence works. Like, Jar Jar Binks is, okay, yeah, Jar Jar Binks is failed comic relief for the most part, but he's intended to be comic relief because he's doing things that are stupid and that you can see that the director kind of wanted them to be funny. And everyone else in the movie is mostly boring, in The Phantom Menace, so you can sort of infer that, yeah, Jar Jar Binks is supposed to be the main comic comedic relief. I'm not sure which one of those it is. I think it might be comedic, but I heard comic before, and I think it sounds better, but it might be wrong. Or it could be both, or it could be that one started off as right, and then people just did it so wrong that the language gave up. Oh, so cute. That's nice. I love that. I love that line. I've used it, like, in a lot of things. Notably in, Days of Deering. Somebody pointed that out on Twitter. They were quoting it. They quoted it wrong, and then they said, I'll delete the tweet and then, like, do the right quote. I'm like, no, I'm not that fussy. I thought it was funny, and I knew what you were referring to. People are too nice to me sometimes. like, I think people have this weird notion that I'm, like, popular or something. Somebody the other day was just telling me, like, oh, you're so popular and everybody loves you. I'm like, ooh, boy. You, like, I don't know, maybe, but I don't feel like it's that way. Like, people disagree with me a lot, and some people flat out hate me, I know, and in certain segments of the Jurassic Park community, I'm very, very much hated and just, like, ignored and, like, actively hated upon. And, it's partly my fault, because I'm like, kind of an obnoxious person in some sense, and, you know what? Silly things aren't for everyone. As much as I try to make the Stegoceratops beautiful, not everyone is going to understand. Again, though, like, a lot of those people haven't read the story, but they just sort of, like, sometimes see the art or don't have context to things. I'm not blaming them or blaming anyone. It's just I haven't presented myself in a good way in that area or in a way that makes sense to people. I think maybe on, like, Jurassic Park Legacy and by extension Twitter, people have sort of been eased into the silly stuff and they've gotten used to it and appreciate it maybe as its own thing. But people who I didn't interact with a lot on Jurassic Park Legacy, who I now interact with on Twitter, I feel like they don't also like the Stegoceratops stuff, and they think it's like, because I'll admit it probably does get annoying and stuff. But, yeah, I don't know. But it is really important to me, I mean, yeah. Oh, we're back to Alan instead of Ellie. We cut away from the antagonist to the protagonist. I don't mean to sound so, like, sarcastic and, like, mean, but I do come off as mean a lot. I just, like, I don't mean to be angry or mean. It's, like, I just sort of come off that way because I'm dumb. As a point of fact, I kind of got into a little bit of a fight the other day on one of the Jurassic Park communities where, one of the ones I was sort of referring to before, where people don't really get the stuff or where it comes from, and I don't present myself in the greatest way, and I come off as a really annoying and stuff. And I had a bit of a fight. It's, like, resolved now. And where was I going with that? Oh yeah, yeah. I think maybe someone said, you come off a little bit mean. And you know what? Like, whenever I lash out at people, it's mostly because of my own insecurities. Because I feel like when people attack me, I feel like or when people attack my ideas, or, like, even Stegoceratops or stuff as dumb as that, I feel like it's a personal attack on me, and I don't take these attacks on me well, because I have so little confidence to begin with that but basically the point is it's not the fault of these people that I lash out. It's my own fault. Well, not necessarily my own fault either, because, sad childhood, all that stuff. But it's within my, not really control, but within, well, my reaction is coming from me, not from them. And, if it was anyone else, if I was less sensitive and stuff, it wouldn't end up that way. But because of, stuff that happened to me in the past, and because of just the way I am and how insecure I am, I lash out, and it's not the people being in the wrong, it's just the way I react. I really hope I haven't made anyone feel bad during these lash out things, like, feel like they did the wrong thing. Like, usually, like, they're not being nice, and they're kind of being a bit aggressive, and they're kind of in the wrong, but I overreact and I make it worse. So yeah. Also, another thing to sort of look at in this protagonist thing, is this next action sequence with the car, and then, with the Gallimimus and all that stuff. Grant is involved in that, and Ellie is back with the computers, where they're just sort of talking about doing things and not actually doing things. He's doing a lot of the physical stuff, which isn't necessarily a protagonist thing. It's just most of the interesting and conflict stuff is, like, he's involved in it, whereas Ellie is just sort of like, well, everyone's sort of saying, like, this is what we need to do to the computers, and then this is happening, and all this stuff is going, and she's just like, yeah, that is what's happening, that's interesting, tell me more. And she's just sort of getting the information out of them because, they're explaining it to her because I think they need sort of, like, someone who doesn't understand what's going on to, like, explain it, so that, by extension, the audience explains it. Like, kind of like a fish out of water, but not exactly. And so, yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, so she's not there to be engaged in what's happening with the computers until the power outage scene. I'll get to that. Sorry, the power turning on scene. I'll get to that again. But she's there to get information out of other people, not even really like thematic information. Really, kind of. Oh, Ellie's back. This is one scene sort of devoted to mostly Ellie, so that's nice. But what was I saying? Jesus Christ. Yeah, she's not there to be like a protagonist in that. She's there to be. I don't want to say an object because that sounds really like demeaning and derogatory. I'm not saying in like a woman sense. I'm saying in a character sense. But she's there to sort of serve a purpose aside from like growing as a person until like sort of that thing with John Hammond. But even then, she's just sort of like she's helping his talking along, not her own like talking. And talking is a bad word to use in that sense. But she's there to assist the conversations of other people who are having more. I don't want to say more interesting, but yeah, more interesting emotional conflicts. That's not to say she's uninteresting. Okay. Also, people make the argument, well, maybe she's also, like, maybe there's a double protagonist, and that does happen in, things. Like, sometimes there's two protagonists and they serve sort of the same thing, the purpose by working as a team and stuff, or, like, maybe even there's more protagonists. Like, this is a weird example, but there's a little children's book called, like, The Five Chinese or Japanese or something brothers, and I don't know, it might be like horribly racist or something in retrospect, but like my dad read it as a kid and he read it to me and we owned it. It's somewhere here. But the five brothers are the protagonists like interchangeably. One of them is a little bit more protagonisty than the other ones, but it's a short storybook, so it has less of a 3-act structure and less of a intensity to the protagonist thing, and it's very like, you know, because storybooky things, with the exception of fairy tales, they have a structure kind of their own that's like somewhat 3-act structure, but not exactly. It's a little bit like there's a lot of progression and repetition slightly different, like using the example of the five brothers or whatever. Like, the whole story is that there's the whole thing that happens, and one of the brothers is going to be executed, and so each of them replaces him, and they try to kill the brothers, and they have, like, superpowers, and so each of them they try to kill them in a different way, but every time they, like, switch out, and so no one dies. And so that's, like, repetition, where we tried to kill this brother, they think it's the same person, but we tried to kill this guy this way, and then we try to kill him this way, and then at the end everything's fine. So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's possible to have multiple protagonists, and so... But the thing is that Ellie's arc, if there even is sort of like an arc, it's kind of hard to see, but there is one there. It's mostly just an extension of Alan's arc, not the children arc, but the, like, coming to terms with theme park arc, which is also more expressed in Hammond, and he's not the protagonist, definitely. Because he's in the call to adventure, and he's the one calling, he's the bringer of the quest or whatever, and so he just, like, I'm not going to say he can't be the protagonist, but in this context, yes, he's just not, and can't be. Yeah, so Ellie's is, like, and again, it's kind of like Owen, he doesn't have much of an arc, but he does stuff for Claire and does what Claire tells him, like, not without question, but what he learns is sort of like a minimized version of what Claire learns, somewhat, except for her arc with learning to become more human, and like Alan's arc, learning to become a better father, and therefore kind of more human. Oh, sorry, my throat is really sore. I was gonna say we're back to Alan. You know what's funny is I was watching some old footage of me as a kid, and there's this little Brachiosaurus toy, stuffed animal. It's now at my dad's, and everything's at my dad's. And in the thing, I stumbled on the word Brachiosaurus kind of like he did, like Tim did in the movie, so that was interesting to me. And again, this is another sort of thematically appropriate scene where they're not exactly monsters, and Alan points that out. And so he's more tied to the theme, and when you're tied to the theme, you're probably the protagonist. Whereas Ellie, when she's tied to the theme, it's through Hammond in that one scene. That one scene kind of makes a case, but at the same time, no. Like, because the reason she's there is not to learn something herself, but for Hammond to learn something. That's one thing I kind of appreciate about Jurassic Park is that, like, some characters who don't necessarily have to have arcs do. Like, Hammond has a really good arc. Maybe kind of a predictable arc, but it's really, like, you see the change in his character, and it's, like, sweet and nice, and you like it. And they didn't do that in the first Jurassic Park novel, obviously. But I'm not saying it's wrong for not having that in there, but I do think I just appreciate Hammond in this version. Did I ever tell you what this joke was in French? Did I record Me with Misa? We watched Jurassic Park. I don't think I recorded Me with Misa, my friend from France. But we watched Jurassic Park together, and it was her first time watching it. Or no, wait, it wasn't her first time watching it. Never mind. Sorry. Or maybe it was. No, it wasn't. It wasn't because she told me that my favorite bit of trivia is French. Ian Malcolm is French Buzz Lightyear because they hire sort of similar people to do stuff. So I don't think I recorded that one. I've recorded a lot of commentaries on Jurassic Park, but never that one, I think. And now she's back in France. Oh, saber-toothed cats. Oh my god. And they're pink and they have stripes. That's spookily close to something coming up in Tis Fu, so that's weird. I wonder how long Ellie was standing there staring at him eating the ice cream. And how she got to there without him seeing, if he was just so into the ice cream. And she's just like, maybe she like stood in front of him for like a little while or like near him, and then she realized that he wasn't like seeing her, so she decided to make a really more noticeable entrance just to make things less awkward. So that's why she was standing there. She's like, well, maybe I'll wait a few minutes when the thrill of the ice cream is worn off. Also, is that oh my god, my mom's playing piano. Is that yellow thing in the background edible or is it just decoration? I would probably try to eat it regardless of whatever. I don't know if you can hear my mom playing piano, but it's not gonna be pretty. She's just practicing. I'm not trying to make a judgment on her piano playing skills. I like this scene. I'm gonna save sort of talking for this, save talking about this for, when I do my little recording on like stuff I thought as a child. Yeah. I've done so many like Jurassic Park commentaries over it, with people and alone, and just I can't even remember them all. I'm getting confused. I don't remember YouTube much. But I've done so many, and it's so weird to think that like me, like a nobody person who is not really like I'm involved in Jurassic Park in the sense that I write fan fiction, but that's not like involved in Jurassic Park, and like I have no good reason to do an audio commentary track on Jurassic Park like as like a thing, like in the sense that like Spielberg doesn't do like commentary tracks, but like he would have a reason to do it because he's the one who made the movie. Maybe like theorists would kind of have a reason, like people would watch it. Even like stuff like Red Letter Media, when they do commentary tracks on movies, like that's because, well, first of all, they have an audience, and second of all, it's because they're kind of important in the like criticism area of like Star Wars, especially and stuff. So yeah, but like I don't want to like it seems pompous just to even record my thoughts on Jurassic Park as it's happening, because like I am not important in this. Like it's yeah, her lines right now, I guess you could kind of make an argument for like a protagonist thing. I think I did that in my lost essay of why she's secretly the protagonist, which was, just playing devil's advocate again. But yeah, anyway, what was I saying before? I don't even care. Oh yeah, I'm not important. I suck. I don't know. Well, maybe in a few years I'll be directing a Jurassic Park movie. Yay! No, but like that's like best case scenario. That'd be like a dream come true. But like probably not. That's the thing with dreams is you never know like to say like one day I'm gonna be president, because a lot of people who say that like they don't become president, but once in a while somebody does, and it's like I don't know, because whether it's true or not, it's things will happen the way they do, and then there's like the stuff of Chris Pratt footage where he's like, "Hi, Steven Spielberg." He's pretending to have a phone. He's like, yeah, I'll be in the next Jurassic Park movie," and he was, and so that's like funny, but it's all just coincidental, and like I guess you never know if saying, "Oh, by the way, Alan's back." If you're going to say something like, "I'm going to do this," if that's going to encourage you to do it, or if it's just going to give you false hope or something. I guess just whatever happens, happens, and that's it. Like, it is my dream to sort of work on a Jurassic Park movie somehow, or whatever, but, like, that's a very specific thing, and not all dreams can come true, and I'm not gonna, like, give up on it, but also, like, I know probably a lot of people wouldn't want me directing a Jurassic Park movie because, like I wouldn't put silly things in it. I wouldn't, because I know that people would hate me for that. It'd be, like, if I was to direct a silly Jurassic Park thing, I would direct, like, a Tish Buffu movie separately. I wouldn't do that to people unless it was, like, widely requested or something. But I don't think people are really ready for that yet. Like, for Jurassic Park to go full, like, Tish-Buffu. Like, I think even the hardcore fans of, like, Tish-Buffu, like, probably wouldn't want it to be canon, like, just in the real world. Like, they probably wouldn't be okay with that, because it's just a fan fiction, and, like, even though I love it a lot, and I would like, personally, for it to be canon, like, that would be great for, like, me, and just, like, the way, because I really, even though I say I hate my work, I do sometimes hate my work, but I do like aspects of it, and, like, not in the sense that I like it, but that it's just, like, because I created it, so it's, like, personally tailored for me, and so it's, like, in that sense I do like it, and so I would like it to be canon, but I know that a lot of people wouldn't, and, it might ruin the magic of Tistra Buffu if it was canon, not just because of, like, the fourth wall jokes and stuff, but because, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, because then people would be opposed to it, whereas if it just stays fan fiction, they're like, "Oh, well, whether I like it or dislike it, it's not part of the actual series, and so that's fine." Like, for instance, it's kind of like, if, maybe the Land Before Time sequels, if you like those, if they were just a fan fiction, I think people would have less problem with it, but it's because they're entries in the actual Land Before Time series that, like, it's like, oh, it's drop in quality, everything's changed, there's aliens now. Oh, that's hot. Not aliens. Well, maybe aliens. I mean, Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum is secretly an alien. Anyway, but my point is also, Ellie is not, very integral to the scene until later on in it. Okay, what was I saying? Yeah, I don't know. I like the stuff I write, but I also don't. And I've probably talked about this more than I think. Probably even in one of the other audio recording thingies. But I don't know. I never know how much to like myself and how much to hate myself, or how much to like my work or how much to hate my work, because it seems like whenever I do drawing that I'm, like, not proud of in an artistic sense, but I'm proud of in the sense that, hey, look, I drew wings on a triceratops, and that's cool that this now exists, and I'm proud because I kind of worked hard and now it exists, and then I, post it somewhere and people are like, wow, your art is really bad, and I'm like, well, I kind of knew that all the time, but I was happy that I made it, and now I'm kind of, like, less happy. But on the other hand, like, sometimes I'm like, okay, you have to hate your work, because if you hate your work, it'll look less bad when people say it sucks. But then that doesn't really help either, because people will have their reactions and nothing really changes that. And so I guess there's no real answer to how much to like yourself or how much to hate yourself. Because, you know, especially in art, when people like themselves and think they're more important than they are, it's really obnoxious. And I don't like that, really. But, you know, when you're in a tight-knit community and you kind of like yourself and you're just, like, happy and you're like, thank you, everyone, for, like... I do genuinely appreciate fans and stuff. Like, I actually do. I know saying that, it sounds like I'm just saying that because, you know, whatever. But I do actually, like, that's the thing that makes it worthwhile, is that other people are reading something that I made, and that something that makes me happy makes them happy as well. And it's like, I'm not alone in this world, etc. What was I gonna say? But yeah, like, when you're in... It's like, you know, when your friend maybe, like, makes, in Photoshop class or something, they make a cute little piece of art, and, like, yeah, you wouldn't buy it, regularly in, like, a store or whatever. The color is really weird in this movie right now, the way they adjusted it. Sorry, just pointing that out. Also, the grass is 3D, and that must be really hard to, like, trace around or however they do it. Anyway, yeah, when you're, you know, it's not like it's kind of patronizing, but, like, when your friend does something and, it's not, like, what you would pay good money for, but you, like, because they're your friend and because they're doing well, you're happy for them, and you can sometimes be happy for yourself when you have a little bit of fame and stuff. That's the thing, sometimes you're just happy for people, even if it's not 100% deserved, but it's just, you know... I think it's also easier to be nice to people you know than, like, nice to people you don't know, because even if somebody really tries to do, like, a piece of art and then they, like, fail, if you know them, you're probably going to be nicer, first of all, because you don't have, like, anonymity and stuff, but second of all, because, well, you have, like, stakes in the friendship or whatever, and third of all, because you know them as a person, and so if they're nice, or, like, smart, or good, or, like, mostly just nice, though. If they're nice, you don't want to be mean to them. Also, I like in the scene how there's a Gallimimus that just sort of stops and looks in horror as his friend is killed. He's like, Jimmy? Jimmy, no! I don't know if I've pointed that out before. I know I've pointed it out before, but I don't know if I've done it on YouTube specifically. I probably have. It'd be funny if somebody, like, nobody's gonna do this, but it'd be funny if somebody went to all my audio recordings and then said, like, made a compilation of all the times when I've, like, said stuff like, I've probably done, oh, by the way, Ellie's back. I've probably done stuff like this before, but, I don't know if I actually did, and then they, like, cut it with me doing it. Like, that's a thing that would happen if I was popular. Anyway. Disneyland. I like Disneyland. There's going to be a, like, Disneyland-ish thing in, Tistripafu, where there's... LK's gonna open a theme park, and yeah, I understand. Whatever joke you made in your head just now, that's exactly what it is. And if you didn't make a joke, like, Jurassic Park is a theme park, but now there's a theme park, and it's like a Disney thing, and, you know, all those other things. I'm saying thing a lot, whatever. So what was I saying? Probably nothing interesting. Oh yeah, patronizing your friends. Not really patronizing in a bad way, but, like, just sometimes you're nice to people, and you should in theory be nice to everyone and be constructive with everyone, but, you know, actually that's kind of what happened with this, thing that, it wasn't even me, you know, like, so the whole reason the argument on this one Jurassic Park thing got started is because somebody was being rude. They keep insisting that they weren't rude, but you know what, they were rude. They were being rude to this one person who had done, like, a request thing, like, for me, and, like, it wasn't necessarily rude, what they were saying, but it kind of was, because, you know what, when you're an artist, and somebody just, like, goes out of their way to say something vague and, like, unkind to you, like, not constructive to you, it's like, if they hate you enough to be negative without explaining why, like, they're probably too dumb to explain why anyway. Not a value judgment on this person. although it actually is true. But you know, just judging by the conversation we had, I'm not trying to say everyone who disagrees with me is dumb. It's just this one person just wasn't getting it and wasn't understanding. It was like talking to a brick wall. It's a situation where, like, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. So I sound like a bitch, and I am, but it's alright. Okay, so what happened is they gave a negative, very vague and nebulous, ambiguous, all of those words, comment that was, and they didn't explain why. They didn't give constructive criticism, because, like, when you just say something like, this sucks, like, you can say that, but it's not helpful to people, especially when, like, there's real people at stake. Like, if you're just watching a movie with your friends, you're like, wow, this sucks. Like, the director's not there, and they're probably not going to hear you, but if you know that someone is there who is involved in the production and stuff, like, first of all, you don't want to look like an asshole in front of them, unless you do, which, whatever. But, sorry, my mom is playing piano really loud. What was I gonna say? But, second of all, like, in order for people to improve, they need to know, like, what they're doing wrong, yes, but they need to, like, understand it in a way where you explain, like, you say, this sucks because, you probably shouldn't use the word suck, but, you should say, like, you could improve with this. It's like the, feedback sandwich, or whatever they call it, where you're like, I enjoy how you did this, however, this can be improved, but overall, this is, because that's a way to make it nice, where you, like, say what you like, and, constructive criticism is just, it's so hard for some people to do it, and I really, really hate that, and it's, like, I know it's not their fault because they're too dumb no, I'm just kidding. It's not their fault because you're not taught usually, except for, like, I mean, in art class, I was taught how to give, like, constructive criticism to some degree, but it's not like you take, like, a whole class on constructive criticism. It's just, people are not usually taught how to be helpful, and that's really sad, because it seems like such a skill that you can, like, apply to anything. So, basically that's pretty much it. Yeah, so I sort of got angry at this person. I tried to be as calm as possible, explain to them why they were dumb for, like, I didn't use, well, maybe I used the word dumb at one point, but I was just sort of saying to them, when you give negative feedback, if you're going to bother to type something into the comment box, you'd better damn well make sure you justify it if you're going to be a jerk. Because when you just say, like, stupid, or, like, suck, it's like, that doesn't help the person, it just sort of makes them feel bad. And you know what, maybe they already understand what's wrong with their work, and that's, like, but that's an assumption that you're making, because usually when people make something and then release it, and they either think it's good or don't really care, or whatever, there's a reason they released it, but, sometimes you're pressured for time or something, or you have to get something done, or you just, like, release it because whatever. And so then, in that case, you do understand what's wrong with the stuff that you've made. But, sometimes you don't even notice the flaws within something you create. And so when people point it out, it's, like, helpful, and you can better yourself as a person, and that's what makes the world a better place. But I guess it's kind of too complicated for some people to wrap their heads around the fact that, like, just saying, this sucks, doesn't really help. And you know what, if you think something sucks, but you can't really, like, say why, you can't really put your finger on it, like, it's a good exercise to try and think what is wrong with it, like, to just sort of say, well, I know it's really hard to think about why, because it just feels wrong, but usually you can come to a kind of solid explanation as to why it feels wrong. So it's good to do that, just, like, think about it, and try to find a solution to make yourself smarter, etc. Improve yourself as a person, all that. But, if you think something sucks, and you're just, like, either too lazy, or you don't really feel like explaining why, or, like, whatever, just don't comment. Like, I know you all have a right to an opinion, yes, but, like, like, don't be a dick, and don't be unhelpful. Like, what does that do? Like, why do you feel the need to, like, do that to people? It's not like there's anything necessary about it. And you know what it's like? It's like when somebody sneezes and then like somebody feels the need to say bless you even though it does nothing. You shouldn't do those things. I'm not saying you're a bad person for saying bless you. But what I'm saying is that just because you feel the impulse to say something because it happened, it's like posting every single photo on your phone to like Twitter or something, which yeah, I know I'm guilty of that too. But you don't have to do it, and unless it's going to improve the world in some way, even like a minor way, or just like entertain people kind of, like just don't be a dick. So like, and you know, like, and sometimes you'll see comments that are like, you know, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And it's like, if it's actually the worst thing you've ever seen, do you not think it's, like, worth your time to say why? And if it's not, then why is it worth your time to say this is the worst thing ever? Is your opinion really, like, that important that people just need to know that you think this sucks, but they don't need to know why? Oh, by the way, cross-cutting between Ellie and Alan. So, yeah. It brings me back to Film 201. We were... I'll work Jurassic Park into anything, but we were sort of... It was either first day of class or some day of class, pretty early on, because we were talking about editing, and the teacher was asking for an example of cross-cutting, and I said, in Jurassic Park, when there, you know, there's a kid on the fence, and then Ellie's there, and blah, 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 blah. And so I used Jurassic Park as an example, and that's a really boring story. One might even say it sucked. Here are the reasons why it sucked. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding about the fact that it sucks. It was just kind of a pointless story. You know what? I will tell you why that story sucked. It was relevant to what was happening, however, it didn't really add anything to the conversation of what was happening in the movie right now, except for the fact that I had a bit of nostalgia, and so maybe you're, like, now you know something more. But it's not like that's information you needed to know. Actually, you know, you might have not known what cross-cutting was before, where you cut back and forth between two things for attention not very rapidly, but fairly rapidly compared to the rest of the film. But now you know if you didn't know before, so I guess that kind of served a purpose, but, it's not like the story was a work of art, it's just sort of like an anecdote. Yeah. So. Oh, here's an interesting thing. We're cutting away from the protagonist. Even if you think Ellie Sattler's the protagonist, which she's not, but even if you think that, we would still be cutting away from her, and away from... Okay, yeah, there's villains in the scene, the raptors, whatever, and it's showing their power, but also, it's showing the fate of another character and why he is no longer in the movie anymore. So that's part of the reason why, but also there's, like... Yeah, I don't know, maybe if he, like... Even if he, like, just fell down a cliff or did something stupid or, like, a meteorite hit him, like, it would still show his death, because otherwise you'd be like, well, where did he go? So, like, showing important things that affect the plot is also a reason why you would cut away from the protagonist. Oh, I was just watching Emperor's New Groove the other day, rewatching it for the billionth time, and they sort of cut away, like, they make a joke about cutting away from the protagonist, where, like, you know, with the chimp and the bug, it's like, can we get back to me? And then, and also with Pacha, when he, like, stops the movie and then he circles him, and yeah. So that's, like, done for humorous effect. But it would be done, like, even if there was no fourth wall breaking, it would be done in a regular Disney movie, because you would need to show, like, the motivations of Pacha, who is the deuteragonist. I don't think he's quite the protagonist, because he doesn't really learn anything. He was sort of right the whole time, and he learns to be a little bit more tolerant, but it's like Cusco has the arc. Let's not kid ourselves. But I laughed really snootily when I said that. That sounded like a really bitch thing. Oh, now the two people are back together, hooray! Also, there was an ass. Oh god, so what was I saying? Yeah, I did a weird thing when I said that sentence a while back, where when I said, like, let's not kid ourselves, haha. And it sounded really bitchy, and I probably sound bitchy a lot. I don't know if I've ever sounded bitchy when, like, I don't acknowledge that I sounded bitchy because I do sort of hate myself and like to point out when I'm bad. Yeah, but I mean, I've probably sounded like a bitch to someone because I'm not very good at communicating tone. Like sometimes I'll be joking about things, like actually genuinely joking, and people will be like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not." I've probably given this example before, but it's true. Like, I'm not a masked vigilante who goes to avenge the death of their parents. That's like Batman, and that was the joke. But people like I did it so deadpan in front of this in this example, like in front of this person, where I like they thought I was being serious, or that I was crazy and thought I was being serious or whatever. Anyway, the point, I guess, is that there is no point, actually. Oh, okay, another example of cutting to something else that's happening is the kids. They're separated, and that's, this sequence is not really, like, advancing of the plot. It's just kind of a cool sequence. Like, I mean, it advances the plot in some respects, but you could just cut it and not really. In fact, like, when I was in high school, we had this, we watched Jurassic Park in drama class for a while, and we had this assignment where we had to make sets for Jurassic Park as a stage play, and we had to like have them rotating and stuff because we were only allowed to build a few sets, and so that was like our limitation, and so blah blah blah. And my partner, whose name was Claire actually, she lives near me, or like used to live near me, in the same neighborhood. She was really insistent for some reason on cutting the kitchen scene, like, and I was like, well, why can't we have the kitchen scene in this play? Like, what's the problem? And she was really, like, fervently, I don't know if I'm using that right now, I'm so tired, but she was, like, really insisting that we cut the kitchen scene from our, like, theoretical play, and I never found out why, but she was, like, really, like, I can't overstate this enough. She just really didn't want it in there. I don't know if it like scared her as a kid, or she just like wanted to have some control in the project or something. My mom is just banging on the piano. Maybe I should have turned the Jurassic Park noise up louder. That's how my Aragon video got taken down though. It's because there's too much noise from the movie. You're not missing much. Nobody, I think, saw that. It got taken down, like, right as it was uploaded. I just wasted, like, okay, well, the first time I did that Aragon commentary, was it? Oh, yeah, I was streaming it, or something happened, and, well, anyway, something happened where, like, something broke or whatever, and it like stopped halfway through. I realized that the recording was wrong. Something happened, and so I wasted like a half hour, like maybe even like 34 minutes, I think it was, on that. And then I had to restart, and I said that in the commentary. So like it's just a few hours of my life wasted. No big deal. It wasn't a good commentary anyway. Like I don't know why, if anyone, I keep saying no one's watching this, so I don't know why I'm doing it, but like I think maybe on a couple people might watch this all the way through, and so like on the off chance that somebody gets something out of it, I'll do it, but otherwise I don't really know what I'm doing or why. I haven't been drinking this Diet Coke that was in the fridge for some reason, so I'll keep doing that. My throat is so sore. I don't know if it's because I'm like talking a lot or what. Maybe it's just because I've been talking without interruption for a while. Usually when I have long conversations, like the other person who I'm with, like there's nobody here right now, obviously, except for me. They'll interject, and then I'll have like my voice gets a break, I guess. And then otherwise when I have like long monologues about things, I always just write them or like tweet them. It's not long when it's on Twitter, but you know. If I write long paragraphs and stuff, like, that's not talking, so it has no effect on my voice, really. But right now I'm being forced to talk for, like, long... Not being forced, but you know what I mean. For a long time, and so that's why. But by the way, we have entered the third act, where the characters fight back against the thing. And then also the resolution. Actually, you know what? Okay, the third act, I've heard kind of two versions of what people think the third act is. I moved away from the microphone a bit, and I saw it affected in, like, little, what do you call those little waves? Where, anyway, okay, distracted. So, oh, also, the person who was arguing with me on Twitter, not arguing, having a discussion, they said that Lex reboots the computer, therefore she is, the one who is the protagonist also, and that's not true, because just because, like, especially when a kid, not even especially when a kid does it, but when a character does something that is related to their skill, this is, like, bad example, but in The Lost World when Kelly does the gymnastics thing, it's like, that's planting and payoff, where a character's trait pays off later, and that justifies their presence in the story. That's just a quick way of saying, like, hey, they had a point here. Not just to be, like, props to the other characters to serve as, like, teaching a lesson on being a daddy or whatever. Oh shit, what was I saying, before this? Oh shit, what was I saying before this? I totally forgot. Oh, third act, I've heard third act as either being, like, the point from when characters start fighting back against the thing, like, and start kind of having a hope of success, to the, like, very end, or I've heard, like, it just being the resolution. I think it sort of starts with, like, the beginnings of the climax, and this, climax is weird because it's not, people always draw it as just a point on the, like, plot graph, but it's really not. It can be a series of things, and the climax in itself is its own little breakdown. So you have the main point when the climax ends, where it's the highest point, ideally, of action. But then you also have, like, a couple of sequences leading up to that, so that would probably start with the, maybe even with the power scene, but I would say more probably the, kitchen scene is the beginning of the climax. And that's up for debate, though. So this is definitely in the climax. The climax, it does sort of have a structure of its own, which kind of makes a problem when it, has the, little dot on the graph, because it's not represented visually well. Those little plot graphs, they don't really, I don't like them that much. Like, they are helpful, but there's a lot of stuff on there that's not 100% right. Because, again, with the length... Sorry, I had to burp. Oh god, I have to burp again. Okay, so, what was I gonna say? Yeah, the 3 acts can be different lengths. There can be a different number of rising action. And sometimes, you know, the climax is even like an anti-climax, so it's not even the highest action, but that's kind of an exception. Punch Drunk Love is a good example, kind of. You think there's gonna be, like, a huge climax, but, like, action-wise, there's more action in other parts of the movie, but it also is the most emotionally, like with the tension in Punch Drunk Love. So if emotions can substitute actual literal action, and, you know, it's, again, all subjective, because, for instance, is clinging to a dinosaur skeleton any more exciting than being chased by a T-Rex in a Jeep or whatever, or, like, you know, having a car almost fall on you. Like, that's all, like, when I say, like, levels of excitement, like, and it's also how it's framed in the movie, because sometimes you can make a really exciting scene less, or a scene that is, like, that has exciting things in it, less impactful, either by mistake or on purpose, or have, like, really, like, where nothing seems to be happening, but it's the emotion that carries it. So it's all about how the movie frames it. So the climax should be more exciting than the rising action scenes, though there usually will be, like, a interesting set-piece action scene somewhere in a movie, in the blockbusters at least. But yeah, just like, yeah. Anyway, this is the moment when the climax ends. Right there, with that bite or whatever. Because now they're safe. Oh, I haven't been talking about themes a lot, which is kind of important with, like, reproduction, creation, all that stuff. I guess it's a little bit late now. Anyway, okay, so you might be saying, well, if this is the climax, why does Alan not have the most direct hand in it, and that is kind of odd, but that's also because it's a Deus Ex Machina, where an external force comes in to save the day, so it's kind of like anticlimactic, but it also is very, I'm not trying to be derogatory, oh my god. Anyway, is the raptor still hanging over that railing, or did it fall? I don't know. So basically why he didn't have a hand in it, I think in the original he was going to have more of a hand in it, where he was, I forget if it was him or if it was Hammond who was supposed to cut the skeletal display and impale the raptors. I know at one point I think Hammond was going to have a shotgun, and that sounds pretty badass. I wish they had done that. In a way I don't, though. Yeah, I don't actually think, yeah. Okay, whatever. Okay, but the point is that, he's present during the climax, he has a direct hand in the climax, and the source of tension is when you think that he is in danger from the antagonist or the antagonistic force. So yeah. Also, the arc that is resolved in this... Oh, I did a really pretentious laugh again, I'm sorry about that. So the arc that's resolved right now, where it's like, this is the resolution, and Jurassic Park has a really, really fast resolution. It's almost a little bit off-putting, but whatever. It's still powerful. Anyway, but it's not Ellie's resolution, it's like his, because the children thing. Ellie's arc, you could arguably say, like, she's kind of for the genetics thing, but then she's kind of not, and then she kind of, like, she sort of goes back and forth. But that's not what's being, like, implied here right now, except for maybe with the birds right now, but, like, that's also kind of, like, it's more Grant's reaction, too. Like, yeah. So, I watched the entirety of Jurassic Park just now, and I didn't really pick up on much dialogue, like I didn't listen to it much because I've just been talking about random stuff. Anyway. Yeah, so, anyway, I guess I'm gonna have to wrap this up. So, Alan Grant is the protagonist, and if you don't believe that, that's okay. If I didn't do a good job convincing you, that's partly my fault. Though some people just can't get through to. But, you know, I've been writing stories for a while, and I've been, like, you know, I am a film major and an English minor, and so it's not like I'm unfamiliar with this stuff. Like, I've been both taught and, like, and you know what, just being taught things doesn't necessarily mean they're right, because you can be taught wrong things, but they make sense, and I've, like, wrote essays, and I've, like, looked it over, I've done research, I've come to form my own opinions, and so, like, this is just stuff, and, you know, just basic storytelling has always been, like, a passion of mine, and so, like, I've understood it and made an effort to understand it just for a while, and so, you know, it's like, it's up to you whether or not you want to trust me, but hopefully I've been able to sort of make you think about this and consider whether it's true or not, because just, you know, just taking someone's word for something to validate your own opinions or to invalidate your own opinions, it's like, that's not enough. You have to sort of be able to say, yes, this makes sense, and I believe that, or I understand that more accurately. So yeah. Yeah. Funny thing, Joseph Mazzello, he came up in my Kubrick class because he was going to be in the Aryan papers or whatever it was, that Kubrick was going to direct but then didn't, and then I thought that was kind of interesting because I wrote about the Kubrick class that I was taking in one of the stories. I also wrote an essay on why Kubrick is basically the Phantom of the Opera, and that essay did surprisingly well, and I don't have it anymore. I don't think it was the greatest thing I've ever written. I deleted it off my computer, and I sort of forgot that I wasn't going to get it back in hard copy, because, yeah, anyway, but I don't think I'd want it back anyway, but you're not missing anything. Not that I, like, show people my terrible, terrible essays anyway, unless they're, like, Jurassic Park related. So anyway, no, it was interesting, though, in the class, because, first of all, I tie everything back to Jurassic Park. But second of all, Kubrick, I sort of tie that to Jurassic Park a lot in what I write, and also because, it was in, like, a Holocaust movie, like, that was going to happen, and, you know, like, there's also a lot of Holocaust stuff in Tis Stupefoo. I'm a terrible person. I've made a silly Jurassic Park fanfiction that has Holocaust imagery. Oh, there's a guy named David Lowry. Oh my god, I can't say names. That's interesting. It's not interesting. I just say that's interesting because it's like my transition thing, or like, it's like my punctuation sentence. Oh my god, I'm so tired. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this if you're still here. I hope maybe it's made something a little bit, oh, there's a guy who has 2 at the end of his name, that's interesting. The second, God, what was I gonna say? I'm so tired and my throat is so sore. Anyway, I hope, like, I don't know what I hope. I kinda do. I hope you liked this. I hope you were interested. I hope maybe you agree with me now. If you don't, I don't blame you. If you do, I guess that's a compliment to me because I've made my points well. Unless you're just following me for no reason. Good god, I just keep saying the same things over and over again. But anyway, okay, so the 3-act structure, protagonist and all that stuff is very fluid, very loose, and the definition is kind of changing sometimes, but that doesn't mean that we have to just say anything goes. Like, it's fun to play devil's advocate, that's the whole reason I wrote that Ellie Sattler thing. But in the end, she is not the protagonist of this story. That's just not how it's structured. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, you're allowed to, like, support things that aren't true, but you also have to not believe that they're the truth. I'm at 23% battery, I should probably just shut up. Skywalker sound, yay! So, there is a Skywalker in Jurassic Park, technically. Because I've also crossed over with Star Wars a lot. Anyway, I guess I'll just end this. So, have fun doing what 22%. Have fun doing whatever, and I hope this was interesting. I guess. Bye.